Princess Kira stood at the grand observation window of her palace, watching the twin moons rise over the crystalline seas of Valoria, and her heart felt heavy with the weight of duty and sorrow that had become her constant companions over the past cycles. She was the last of the royal bloodline, and the physicians had declared her unable to produce an heir due to a genetic condition that affected her reproductive system, and this meant the end of a dynasty that had ruled Valoria for 10,000 years. The Empire needs continuity. Her father, the Emperor, had told her countless times, and his voice always carried the burden of disappointment mixed with love, and Kira felt that weight crushing her spirit day after day. Her people, the Valorians, were a proud and ancient race with skin that shimmered like mother of pearl, and eyes that held the depth of galaxies, and they had built an empire spanning 12 star systems through wisdom and careful diplomacy rather than conquest. But now that empire faced uncertainty, because tradition demanded that only those of royal blood could inherit the throne, and Kira was the last. She turned away from the window as her attendant Mira entered the chamber with a concerned expression on her delicate features. "The human delegation has arrived, Your Highness," Mira announced softly, "and they await your presence in the diplomatic hall." Kira sighed and straightened her flowing robes of silver and blue, and she had forgotten about the meeting with the humans who had requested an audience to discuss trade agreements and cultural exchange. The humans were a relatively young species, having only achieved interstellar travel 3 generations ago, but they had proven themselves to be resourceful and surprisingly compassionate, and the Valorian Empire had maintained friendly relations with Earth for the past 40 years. She made her way through the corridors of the palace, where walls of living crystal pulsed with soft bioluminescent light, and the air smelled of exotic flowers from the royal gardens. The diplomatic hall was vast, with a ceiling that displayed the real-time positions of stars in their sector of the galaxy, and a delegation of 5 humans stood waiting, and their differences in appearance fascinated Kira, as they always did. Humans came in such variety of skin tones and features, unlike Valorians who all shared similar characteristics, and she found their diversity beautiful in its own way. "Welcome to Valoria," Kira said, in perfect English as she had studied their language extensively, "and we are honored by your presence." A woman with warm brown skin and kind eyes stepped forward, and she wore a simple blue uniform with insignia that marked her as a diplomatic officer. "Thank you, Your Highness," the woman said with a respectful bow. "And my name is Commander Lisa Morgan, and we bring greetings from Earth and proposals for expanded cooperation between our peoples." The meeting proceeded with discussions of trade routes and technology sharing and scientific collaboration, but Kira found her attention drawn to a man standing slightly behind Commander Morgan. He was tall for a human, with sandy hair and gentle gray eyes that seemed to notice everything around him, and when he caught her looking at him, he smiled slightly, and it was a warm, genuine expression that made something flutter in her chest. "That is Dr. Ryan Cooper," Commander Morgan said, noticing the exchange, "and he is our chief xenobiologist and has studied Valorian culture extensively." Dr. Cooper stepped forward and bowed, and Kira noticed the grace in his movements. "Despite humans being generally less fluid than her people, it is an honor to meet you." "Your Highness," Ryan said, and his voice was deep and pleasant, "and your people have achieved so much, and we have much to learn from you." Over the following days, the human delegation remained on Valoria to finalize agreements, and Kira found herself seeking out Ryan Cooper more frequently than diplomatic protocol required. He was different from the Valorian nobles who had courted her over the years, and those suitors had always been focused on duty and bloodlines. But Ryan seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts and feelings. They walked together in the palace gardens where flowers bloomed in colors that did not exist on Earth, and Ryan asked questions about her life and her dreams with sincere curiosity. "On your world," Kira asked as they sat beside a fountain of liquid light, "do people marry? For love or for duty?" Ryan considered the question carefully before answering, and his thoughtfulness was one of the things she had come to appreciate about him. "Both," he said honestly, "but in recent centuries, love has become more important. And we believe that 2 people who care for each other deeply create stronger families and happier lives." Kira felt tears prick at her eyes, and such a concept was beautiful but impossible for her. "What troubles you?" Ryan asked gently, and you do not have to tell me, but I can see sadness in your eyes. She should not confide in him, and he was an outsider, and her problems were matters of state, but something about his presence made her feel safe. I cannot have children, Kira said quietly, and among my people this is not just a personal sorrow, but a crisis for the Empire, and I am the last of the royal line. Ryan listened without interruption as she explained the genetic condition and the expectations placed upon her, and the crushing weight of letting down her entire civilization. I am sorry, Ryan said when she finished, and his compassion was genuine, and that must be incredibly painful. Have your doctors explored all possibilities, he asked after a moment, and I do not mean to overstep, but human medicine has made remarkable advances in reproductive technology. Valorian physicians are the finest in known space, Kira replied with a sad smile. And if they cannot help me, no one can. Ryan nodded, but she could see thoughts working behind his eyes, and he was a scientist, and she suspected he was already considering problems and solutions. The human delegation extended their stay at the Emperor's invitation, and Kira spent more time with Ryan, and they discussed art and philosophy and the nature of life itself. She showed him the archives of memory where Valorian history was stored in crystalline matrices, and he shared stories of Earth and its tumultuous but inspiring journey to the stars. One evening, as they watched the sunset from a balcony high in the palace, Ryan reached out and gently took her hand, and the touch sent warmth through her entire body. I have grown to care for you deeply, Ryan said. And I know our worlds are different and our species are different. But what I feel is real. Kira felt her hearts, both of them, as Valorians had two racing in her chest. Care for you too, she admitted, but there can be no future for us, and my duty is to my people. What if there was a way, Ryan asked, and his eyes bright with possibility, and what if human and Valorian biology were compatible in ways your doctors have not considered? That is impossible, Kira said, but hope flickered dangerously in her chest. Is it? Ryan challenged gently. And your people and mine share surprising similarities in our genetic structure, and we both evolved from carbon-based life and both have remarkable healing abilities and both value family and connection. I would need to study your medical records with your permission, he continued, and consult with your physicians, and I make no promises, but I would like to try. Kira wanted to dismiss it as impossible, but something in his conviction made her hesitate. Why would you do this? She asked. And you barely know me. Because you deserve happiness, Ryan said, simply, and because love should not be bound by biology or duty, and because I believe in possibilities. She agreed to let him work with the Valorian medical team, and over the following weeks Ryan immersed himself in research, and he studied the genetic markers of her condition and compared them with human reproductive biology. The Valorian physicians were skeptical at first, but Ryan's insights into cross-species compatibility opened new avenues of investigation. He proposed a radical theory that the reason Kira could not conceive with Valorian males was because her genetic code had mutated to require specific markers that were absent in her own species but might be present in humans. It sounds absurd, he admitted to the medical team, but nature often surprises us, and genetic compatibility is not always logical. After extensive testing and simulation, the head physician, Dr. Sella, approached Kira with stunning news. Your Highness, Dr. Sella said, and her voice trembling slightly. And Dr. Cooper's theory appears to be correct, and your condition creates a genetic lock that Valorian DNA cannot open, but human DNA possesses the complementary sequences. Are you saying Kira could barely speak, and that I could have a child with a human? It is theoretically possible, Dr. Sella confirmed, and though we have never attempted such a thing, and the child would be hybrid, and both Valorian and human. Kira's mind reeled with possibilities and hope and fear all mixing together. There are risks, Dr. Sella continued, and we do not know how a hybrid pregnancy would progress, and it could be dangerous for you, and the child might face challenges we cannot predict, but it is possible. Kira pressed. Yes, Dr. Sella said softly, and it is possible. Kira found Ryan in the gardens that evening, and he was examining a bioluminescent flower. With the careful attention he gave to everything, you were right, she said as she approached, and her voice shaking, and there is a possibility. Ryan turned to her, and his expression filled with wonder and relief. "I am glad," he said. But the choice is yours. And it must always be yours." Kira took both of his hands in hers and looked into his eyes. "My whole life I have been told what I must do and who I must be, and I have accepted that I would marry for duty and rule alone and die knowing my line ended with me. But you have given me something I thought I had lost," she continued. "And you have given me hope and choice and the possibility of love." She took a deep breath. "And if you will have me not as a princess, but as a... It only cares that I have found my match and it demands that I act on it." The pain in Lyra's voice cut through Jake like a knife. He moved around the desk, slowly approaching her but keeping some distance between them. "Lyra," he said gently, "look at me." She turned slowly, and the anguish on her face made Jake's heart ache. "I am so sorry," she whispered. "I am sorry for being cruel to you when you have done nothing wrong. I am sorry for making these months difficult when you have only ever tried to be kind. I am sorry for hating you when what I really hate is this impossible situation." Jake took another step closer. "You don't have to apologize," he said. "I can imagine how hard this has been for you." "You do not understand," Lyra said, shaking her head. "The recognition is not just some passing attraction that will fade with time. It is permanent. For the rest of my life I will feel this pull toward you, even if I return to Valdrani space, even if I never see you again. I will spend every day fighting against the need to be with you. It will consume me slowly until there is nothing left, is there?" "No way," Jake started to ask, but Lyra cut him off. "There is one way," she said quietly. "If the bond is completed, if both parties acknowledge the recognition and accept it, then the pain stops, the pull becomes something manageable, something beautiful instead of something that tears you apart from the inside. But that would require you to feel the same way. And even if you did, it would mean I must choose between you and everything I have ever known." Jake stood there looking at this proud, strong warrior woman who was falling apart in front of him because of something neither of them had chosen or asked for. He thought about the past 6 months, about how he had been drawn to her despite her coldness. He thought about how he had noticed everything about her, the way she moved, the sound of her voice, the fierce intelligence in her eyes. He thought about how he had gone to sleep, thinking about her, and woken up doing the same. And he realized, with sudden clarity, that maybe the recognition wasn't as one-sided as Lyra thought. "I don't know anything about Valdrani biology or bonding customs," Jake said slowly. "But I do know that from the moment you arrived, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. I told myself it was just frustration because I couldn't figure out why you disliked me. But if I'm honest with myself, it was more than that." Lyra's eyes widened. "Jake Morrison," she breathed. "I'm not saying I understand what you're experiencing," he continued, "and I'm not going to pretend I know what the right answer is here. But I do know that these past 6 months have been torture for me too. Just in a different way. Watching you and wanting to get to know you and feeling like there was this wall between us that I could never climb over." Lyra took a step toward him and then stopped herself. "You cannot mean this," she said. "You cannot understand what you would be accepting. The bond between Valdrani is for life, woman who cares for you deeply. Then I choose you." Ryan pulled her close and held her as tears of joy streamed down her face, and when he kissed her, it felt like coming home to a place she had never known existed. But convincing the Emperor and the High Council was another matter entirely. "Your Highness, the Council will never accept this," Chief Advisor Tolan said when she announced her intention to marry Ryan and a hybrid heir, "and it is unprecedented." "Then let us set a precedent," Kira replied with newfound strength, "and our empire was built on wisdom and adaptation, not rigid adherence to tradition. The Empire needs legitimate continuity," Tolan argued. "And how can a half-human child rule Valorians the same way any ruler does?" Kira countered, "and with wisdom and compassion and dedication to our people. And these qualities are not carried in pure bloodlines, but in character." Her father, the Emperor, listened to both sides of the argument with his usual thoughtful silence. "You love this human?" he finally asked Kira directly. "Do," she replied without hesitation, and he has shown me that love and duty need not be enemies." The Emperor studied Ryan, who stood beside Kira with quiet dignity. Do you understand what you would be taking on? The Emperor asked Ryan, and you would be consort to a princess and father to the future ruler of an empire, and you would leave your homeworld behind. I understand, Ryan said firmly, and I am ready to dedicate my life to Kira and to Valoria, and I will honor your people and work to bridge our worlds. The Emperor was silent for a long moment before he spoke again. In all my years, I have seen empires rise and fall, and I have seen tradition become chains that strangle progress, he said. And my daughter has always put duty before herself, and now she asks for one thing for herself. He stood and walked to Kira and placed his hand on her shoulder. If this is your choice, then you have my blessing, he said, and let love be the foundation of the next era of our empire. The wedding was a blend of Valorian and human customs, and representatives from Earth arrived to witness the unprecedented union, and skeptics remained. But many Valorians were moved by the obvious love between their princess and the human scientist. Kira wore robes of silver that flowed like water, and Ryan wore formal attire from Earth, and they exchanged vows in both languages, promising to honor and cherish each other across the stars. The celebration lasted 3 days, as was Valorian tradition, and Ryan learned to dance the complex patterns of Valorian ceremony, while Kira laughed at his earnest attempts to master the steps. When the festivities ended, they retreated to private quarters in the palace, and there, in the quiet intimacy of their chambers, they came together as husband and wife. Kira had been nervous about the physical differences between their species, but Ryan was gentle and patient, and their union felt natural and right and beautiful. The weeks that followed were filled with happiness as they learned each other's rhythms and built a life together. Ryan continued his research and began teaching at the Valorian Science Academy, and his perspectives on biology and evolution fascinated students and scholars alike. Kira found that sharing her duties with someone who truly supported her made the weight of responsibility easier to bear. And then one morning, 3 months after their wedding, Kira woke feeling strange, and Dr. Sella confirmed what Kira hardly dared to hope. "You are with child, Your Highness," Dr. Sella said with tears in her eyes, "and the impossible has become possible." Kira could not speak through her tears, and Ryan held her close and whispered words of love and amazement. The pregnancy progressed differently than a typical Valorian gestation, and Kira's body adapted in unexpected ways in human and Valorian biology working together to nurture the new life. There were complications and moments of fear when the hybrid nature of the child created medical challenges no doctor had faced before. But Ryan never left her side, and he worked with the medical team to find solutions, and his love gave her strength when she felt weak. The Empire watched with fascination and hope as their princess carried the future in her womb, and those who had been skeptical began to see the union as a symbol of possibility, rather than tradition broken. After 7 months, which was shorter than Valorian pregnancy, but longer than human, Kira went into labor. The delivery was difficult, and there were moments when Dr. Sella feared they would lose mother or child, or both. But Kira was strong and determined, and Ryan held her hand through every contraction and every moment of pain. And then finally a cry filled the room, and a baby girl emerged into the world. She was beautiful and perfect, with her mother's luminous skin that shimmered with pearl-like iridescence, and her father's gray eyes that seemed to hold both Earth and Valoria in their depths. The Princess Maya, Kira whispered as she held her daughter for the first time, and named for the human concept of illusion becoming reality. Ryan looked at his wife and daughter with wonder and love so profound it seemed to fill the entire room. The Empire celebrated for weeks as news spread that the royal line would continue, and the hybrid princess was seen as a bridge between worlds and a symbol of unity. Maya grew quickly and showed traits from both parents, and she had her mother's grace and intelligence, and her father's curiosity and compassion. She could survive in both Earth's atmosphere and Valoria's, and her immune system was remarkably strong, combining the best of both species. As she learned to walk and talk in both languages, scholars studied her development with fascination, and she represented possibilities for future cooperation between humans and Valorians. But more than that, she was loved and cherished by parents who had defied expectations and found each other across the stars. On Maya's first birthday, Kira stood again at the observation window, watching the twin moons rise. But this time Ryan stood beside her with their daughter sleeping peacefully in his arms. I spent so long believing I was broken, Kira said softly, and that I had failed before I even began. But you were never broken, Ryan replied, and you just needed someone whose pieces fit with yours in unexpected ways. Kira leaned against him and felt the warmth of her family, and the weight of sorrow she had carried for so long had transformed into joy. The Empire would endure, and the royal line would continue. But, more importantly than duty or tradition, she had found love. And in the end, that love had created not just an heir, but a future neither species could have imagined alone. Maya stirred in Ryan's arms and opened her eyes, and those beautiful gray eyes that held galaxies and looked up at her parents with trust and love. In the years that followed, the alliance between Earth and Valoria grew stronger, and more humans came to live and work among Valorians, and more unions between the species occurred. Maya became a symbol of what was possible, when different worlds came together with open hearts, and she would one day rule with wisdom inherited from both her peoples. But that was the future. And in this moment, Kira was content to stand with her husband and daughter and watch the moons rise over the crystalline seas of home. The alien princess who thought she could never bear children had found that love transcended biology and species and expectation. And in that love, she had found not just the ability to create life, but the ability to imagine a future where difference was strength, and where two worlds could become one family. The end of one era and the beginning of another, and both marked by hope and the courage to believe in impossible things.